Ever felt like someone was messing with your mind, but couldn't quite put your finger on it? You might have been manipulated, and I get it. I've been there too. We're about to dive into mind games that manipulators play, and if you recognize even one of these, it's time to wake up. Trust me, these games aren't just innocent tricks. They're designed to keep you doubting yourself and second-guessing everything. There was a time I thought I had my life in control, but then I started noticing strange patterns in certain relationships, people who would make me feel guilty, weak, even crazy sometimes. And you know what? These weren't just misunderstandings or personality quirks, they were mind games. Calculated ones. This video isn't about pretending we're above it all. Manipulators know exactly how to fly under the radar and strike at our insecurities, and we all fall for it sometimes. Today, we're cutting through the noise and exposing manipulation tactics people use to control, weaken, and confuse you. These aren't just mean behaviors. They're toxic tools of control. And by the end of this, you'll not only see through these tricks, but you'll also know how to throw a wrench in every one of their plans. So buckle up. Let's dive into the uncomfortable truth about manipulators and how to outsmart them for good. First, gaslighting. What it is. Gaslighting isn't just lying or twisting the truth. It's a relentless assault on your perception of reality. This goes beyond manipulation. It's a psychological tactic to control your sense of self by distorting what's real and what's not. For a manipulator, making you question your own thoughts and memories means they're free to rewrite reality to fit their own agenda. Real talk. I'll never forget a time when I was dealing with someone who gaslighted me at every turn. It started small. "Are you sure you said that?" Or, "I don't remember it that way at all." But it escalated quickly. One day, after a conversation where we'd agreed on something important, they turned around a week later and insisted it had never happened. When I protested, they looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're always so confused. I really think you should get that checked out." At first, it made me laugh nervously, but as it continued, I began questioning if I was actually losing it. I'd ask myself, am I overreacting? Am I just being too sensitive? Why it's so dangerous? Gaslighting is insidious because it makes you believe that you're the problem. By constantly suggesting that you're mistaken, overreacting, or crazy, manipulators create a loop in your mind where you second-guess everything you feel and experience. Over time, you start to question not just what's happening, but your ability to even judge reality accurately. And that's where the real danger lies. Gaslighting makes you feel like you need to rely on the other person to tell you what's true. And once you're hooked on their version of reality, they have total control. Outsmart them. If someone is gaslighting you, the first and most important step is to trust your inner voice. Don't be afraid to anchor yourself in the facts of your own reality. Keep a record of important conversations or agreements. It may feel excessive, but it's a powerful tool in reclaiming your confidence. Another tactic? Find someone you trust outside of the situation to help you reality check when things feel distorted. Remember, manipulators fear someone who trusts their own judgment and doesn't need external validation. The deep message. Here's the real truth that's often overlooked. When someone tries to control your perception of reality, they're not just distorting facts. They're chipping away at the foundation of who you are. It's like they're slowly replacing your confidence with doubt, little by little, until you feel too unstable to stand up for yourself. And it's subtle enough that you might not even notice it's happening, which is exactly what makes gaslighting so dangerous. But remember this, your mind and your truth are yours, and no one has the right to take that from you. If you ever feel like your reality is being shaped to someone else's design, take a step back, center yourself, and remember your experiences and your instincts are valid. Trusting yourself and defending your truth isn't just a path to strength, it's a path to freedom. Stand firm in what you know is real, because that's where your power lies. Manipulators thrive on your self-doubt, but the moment you hold on to your truth and your perspective, they lose their control. The strength of your mind, your truth, and your intuition, that's a fortress no one can invade. Second, love bombing. What is it? Love bombing might sound harmless, even flattering, but it's actually one of the most deceptive forms of manipulation. It's when someone showers you with excessive praise, gifts, and constant attention to create an intense emotional bond, and it feels incredible at first. But there's a dark side. Love bombing isn't about genuine affection, it's about control. Manipulators use it to make you feel so special and valued that you let your guard down and start depending on them for your happiness. Real talk. I remember being love-bombed by someone in the past. They would text me constantly, saying things like, "I've never felt this way before, you're the most amazing person I've ever met," and "I'll always be there for you, no matter what." In the beginning, it felt like I'd met the perfect person. Who wouldn't want to feel that adored? They'd go out of their way to make sure I felt like a priority, sending random gifts, making surprise plans, and flooding my inbox with sweet messages. But then things started to shift. Whenever I needed space or tried to slow things down, they'd guilt-trip me, saying things like, "I just care so much. I thought you did too." It was subtle, but every time I pulled away, they'd escalate their efforts, and it kept me in a loop of wanting to keep them happy to maintain the love they were giving. Why it's so dangerous. Love bombing is designed to be addictive. Manipulators create a whirlwind of affection that can sweep you off your feet so fast you don't realize what's happening. It's not just about making you feel loved, it's about creating a dependency. Because when that intense love and attention inevitably pull back, you're left craving it, wondering what you did wrong, and feeling compelled to do anything to get that feeling back. Manipulators use this dependency to keep you on a leash, keeping you invested and compliant. They know that once you've experienced that high, you'll do almost anything to avoid the low. Love bombing essentially traps you in a cycle of validation, where you feel like you need them to keep feeling whole or worthy. Outsmart them. The key to avoiding love bombing is to be cautious about relationships that start intensely, whether romantic or otherwise. If someone seems too good to be true, or is pushing for a deep connection too fast, take a step back and observe their behavior. Real, lasting affection grows over time and doesn't come with an agenda. Remember, if love is real, it will still be there tomorrow, next week, or next month. It doesn't need to be rushed. Setting boundaries early on is also crucial. If you need space, take it, and don't feel pressured by their reaction. Healthy relationships respect boundaries and don't punish you for having them. The deep message. Here's a hard truth. Love bombing is designed to make you dependent on someone else for your self-worth. It's not just about love, it's about control through validation. When someone makes you feel like you're only valuable when they're showering you with affection, they're putting themselves in control of your happiness. But your worth isn't dependent on how much someone else chooses to give you. True love and respect don't require constant reassurances or grand gestures. They're shown over time with respect for your autonomy. Learning to recognize love bombing isn't about being cynical. It's about protecting yourself. If you rely on someone else to feel whole, you give them the power to shatter you. But when you hold on to your own worth, manipulators lose their grip. Real love doesn't need to flood in all at once to prove itself. It's steady, consistent, and respects you as you are. So, the next time someone tries to sweep you off your feet too fast, ground yourself in your own worth. Because no one, no matter how charming or intense, has the right to define your value. Third, triangulation. What is it? Triangulation is one of the most cunning tactics manipulators use to control you by drawing in a third person to create tension, rivalry, or insecurity. This isn't a simple misunderstanding or harmless gossip. It's a deliberate strategy. By bringing someone else into the equation, manipulators can control your emotions, manipulate how you perceive the relationship, and make you constantly fight for their approval. It's about creating a sense of competition, so you're always trying to win their affection or favor, leaving them firmly in control. Real talk. I remember being on the receiving end of triangulation with someone I thought I trusted. Every time we disagreed, they'd casually mention how someone else had complimented them or how another person just understood them better. One time, I remember them saying, "My friend agrees with me on this. They don't think I'm too harsh at all." They'd constantly mention other people who apparently valued them or were more supportive, as if to remind me that I wasn't good enough or wasn't meeting their expectations. It created this subtle sense of competition where I felt like I had to prove myself, show that I was loyal, and be better than this invisible third party. I'd find myself constantly apologizing or bending over backward to please them, just so I could stay in their good graces and not be replaced by someone else. Why it's so dangerous? Triangulation is dangerous because it destabilizes you by making you feel insecure and pitting you against others. When manipulators triangulate, they create a false hierarchy where you're always on the bottom, fighting to climb up. It's a method of control that works by making you constantly feel like you're one misstep away from being lesser or unworthy. They love watching you strive to prove yourself, needing their approval and acceptance just to feel secure. Manipulators thrive on this dynamic because it keeps you focused on winning them over instead of realizing how unfairly you're being treated. This is what makes it so insidious. You're so wrapped up in trying to fix yourself to stay on their good side that you don't even see the game they're playing. Outsmart them. Recognizing triangulation is the first step. Pay attention to how you feel when this third person is mentioned. If you feel suddenly insecure or competitive, it's a red flag. Manipulators rely on making you question your worth in comparison to others, so break that cycle by refusing to engage in the competition they set up. If they start bringing up other people's opinions or support, calmly and assertively bring the focus back to the direct relationship. Say something like, "Let's keep this between us," or "I'd like to focus on how we feel about this." not other people's opinions. Manipulators hate this because it denies them the tool they rely on to destabilize you. Once you stop playing their game, they lose the power to control you through insecurity. The deep message. Here's a reality check. Triangulation is all about creating a constant comparison, making you feel that someone else might replace you at any moment. But real relationships, whether romantic, friendships, or professional, don't need to put you in competition. Genuine bonds are built on mutual respect, trust, and value. If someone is trying to make you feel like you're one mistake away from being replaced, it's not love or respect, it's control. The deep truth here: manipulators use triangulation because it taps into a universal fear of being not enough. But your worth isn't a game to be won or a competition against someone else. Stand firm in your own value. When you recognize that your worth is independent of anyone's opinion, you can step back from the toxic cycle they try to trap you in. You don't need to compete to prove your place in anyone's life. Real, healthy relationships don't require you to question your value or compete for someone's approval. They recognize your value and accept you as you are. So, the next time someone tries to bring in a third person to make you feel less, remember, you are more than enough, and no one has the right to make you feel otherwise. Fourth, projection. What is it? Projection is a manipulation tactic where someone takes their own flaws, insecurities, or wrongdoings and attributes them to you. It's like a psychological mirror. They refuse to see their own issues, so they project them onto you, making you feel guilty for things you didn't do or qualities you don't have. Projection can range from blaming you for mistakes they made to accusing you of traits they can't face in themselves. It's a powerful tool to deflect accountability and make you question your own behavior. Real talk. I experienced projection firsthand with a friend who had a habit of turning every situation into a competition. They'd often accuse me of trying to be better than everyone else or acting like I know everything. At first, I tried to understand if there was something I was doing wrong. Maybe I was coming across as arrogant. But over time, I started to see a pattern. Anytime they felt insecure, they'd project it onto me, accusing me of the very things that actually stemmed from their own fears and insecurities. They'd say, "You're always looking down on people," or "You think you're smarter than everyone else," when in reality, they were the one who struggled with self-worth. But they avoided facing their own issues by making it my responsibility, turning their insecurities into my supposed character flaws. Why it's so dangerous? Projection is particularly damaging because it messes with your self-perception. When someone constantly accuses you of their own flaws, you start questioning yourself, even if there's no truth to it. You end up overanalyzing your behavior and feeling guilty for things you haven't done. This can make you feel trapped, constantly trying to fix yourself to avoid accusations that aren't based on reality. Manipulators love projection because it allows them to avoid responsibility while making you carry the emotional weight of their issues. It's a clever trick to control you through guilt, making you feel responsible for their unhappiness or shortcomings. It's also incredibly disorienting because, over time, you may start to internalize their projections and genuinely believe you're the problem. Outsmart them. The first step to outsmarting projection is recognizing it. When someone accuses you of a behavior or quality that feels completely off, or doesn't align with your self-image, pause and ask yourself if it might be more about them than about you. One effective response is to keep your reactions neutral. For example, if they accuse you of being too controlling, respond calmly and ask, "Can you explain why you feel that way?" Instead of defending yourself or taking on their accusations, reflect the question back to them. This forces them to either confront the reality of their own behavior or leave the topic. Another powerful approach. Distance yourself from their judgments and remember that their words are often a reflection of their own issues, not a truth about you. The deep message. Here's a harsh but empowering truth. Projection is often a sign of someone's refusal to take accountability for their own growth. Manipulators use projection because it's easier to blame you than it is to face their own flaws and insecurities. And that's not your burden to carry. When people project, they're trying to avoid their inner struggles by making them your responsibility. But this isn't about you. It's about them and their unwillingness to look in the mirror and confront what's actually going on. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's insecurities or accusations. The way others see you is often colored by their own unresolved issues. True strength comes from understanding that not every criticism is valid, especially when it's coming from someone who avoids self-reflection. Don't let someone else's projections dictate how you see yourself. Stand firm in your self-awareness, trust your character, and refuse to let their distorted version of reality become yours. Remember, you're not here to be the mirror for someone else's insecurities. The more you stay grounded in who you are, the less power projection has over you. Recognize it, reject it, and let them keep the weight of their own insecurities. It's not yours to bear. 5. Guilt tripping. What is it? Guilt tripping is a subtle yet powerful manipulation tactic where someone makes you feel responsible for their feelings, decisions, or actions. They tap into your sense of empathy and moral duty, twisting it to make you feel like you're always falling short, even if you've done nothing wrong. Instead of addressing issues directly, they use guilt as a tool to control you, often framing things in a way that makes you feel like a bad person if you don't do exactly what they want. Real talk. I once had a friend who would guilt trip me whenever I set boundaries or prioritized myself. Anytime I couldn't meet up or needed to say no, they'd hit me with lines like, "I guess I'm just not that important to you," or "I'd do anything for you, but I guess it's different for you." These comments would make me feel horrible, like I was letting them down or wasn't a good friend. I'd end up apologizing, explaining myself, or even rearranging my plans just to avoid the guilt, which I later realized was exactly the reaction they wanted. This friend knew that I was empathetic and didn't want to hurt anyone, and they used it to make sure I felt obligated to prioritize them. Looking back, I can see how they repeatedly used guilt to keep me in line without ever having to address their own unrealistic expectations. Why it's so dangerous? Guilt tripping is dangerous because it targets your empathy, turning one of your best qualities into a weapon against you. Manipulators know that guilt can be a powerful motivator, especially for people who genuinely care about others and want to avoid causing harm. Guilt tripping exploits this, making you feel like you're in the wrong even when you're just taking care of yourself or setting healthy boundaries. Over time, it can wear down your self-esteem and sense of autonomy. You start to feel like you're constantly in debt to them, never able to do enough to satisfy their expectations. It's a cycle that can make you feel powerless, as if you have no choice but to keep sacrificing your needs to keep them happy. Guilt tripping doesn't just manipulate your actions, it erodes your self-worth, leaving you feeling constantly guilty for simply being yourself. Outsmart them. The key to outsmarting guilt tripping is learning to recognize it and stand firm in your decisions. When someone tries to make you feel guilty for a reasonable choice, take a step back and assess if what they're asking for is fair. If they're trying to make you feel responsible for their happiness or well-being, remember that you're not obligated to compromise your needs to meet theirs. Practice setting boundaries and sticking to them without over-explaining. For example, if they say, "I thought you cared about me," you could respond, "I do care, but I also need to take care of myself." This puts the responsibility back on them to respect your boundaries without getting defensive or apologetic. Remember, real friends and loved ones respect your boundaries without making you feel bad for having them. Another helpful tactic is to recognize and name the guilt tripping for what it is. Saying something like, "It sounds like you're trying to make me feel guilty," can disarm a manipulator. They rely on you internalizing the guilt, but by addressing it openly, you strip away their power and make them confront their own behavior. When you refuse to play into their guilt trips, manipulators lose control over the narrative they're trying to create. The deep message. Here's the real takeaway. Guilt tripping is about control, not care. When someone uses guilt to manipulate you, they're saying, "My needs come before your well-being." True love and respect don't need to make you feel bad for setting boundaries. Guilt trippers rely on you feeling so obligated to them that you put your own needs aside, and they can subtly erode your confidence by making you believe you're selfish or unloving for taking care of yourself. But real connections, whether in friendships, family, or romantic relationships, aren't built on shame or guilt. They're built on respect, mutual understanding, and balance. The deep truth: you're allowed to choose yourself without feeling guilty. You're allowed to say no, to set boundaries, and to protect your energy, even if others don't understand or agree. True strength comes from recognizing that your empathy is a gift, not a weakness to be exploited. Don't let anyone weaponize your kindness against you. You don't owe anyone your constant sacrifice, and people who genuinely care about you won't expect you to feel guilty for setting limits. Standing up to guilt tripping isn't about being selfish. It's about honoring your own value and self-respect. So, the next time someone tries to make you feel guilty, remember, you're not responsible for their happiness, and your worth isn't determined by your willingness to appease others at your own expense. 6. Withholding important information. What is it? Withholding information is a tactic where someone intentionally keeps critical details from you, either to control the situation, maintain an advantage, or manipulate your decisions. They may claim it slipped their mind or downplay its importance, but it's often a calculated move to keep you in the dark, leaving you unsure or reliant on them for guidance. This tactic can be subtle, but incredibly damaging because it erodes trust and puts you in a vulnerable position where you're constantly operating without the full picture. Real talk. I once worked with someone who was notorious for withholding details. Whenever we'd start a project, they'd leave out key pieces of information, and I'd only find out later, usually after I'd made a decision based on partial information. When I'd ask why they didn't tell me sooner, they'd brush it off or claim it wasn't relevant at the time. But here's the thing, it was relevant, and their omission put me in a position where I was always on the back foot, needing to adjust my work or clean up mistakes that could have been avoided. I eventually realized this was their way of keeping control over the project and, indirectly, over me. By withholding information, they created a situation where I was constantly second-guessing myself and coming to them for answers, which, in turn, reinforced their authority. Why it's so dangerous? Withholding information is one of the most insidious forms of manipulation because it's easy to overlook. If someone withholds information often enough, you might start doubting your ability to make informed decisions on your own. It's a tactic used to control without overt aggression. It quietly undermines your confidence and keeps you dependent. By only giving you part of the story, they steer you into decisions that benefit them and leave you open to consequences you didn't anticipate. This method of manipulation is especially harmful in close relationships or work environments where trust and collaboration are essential. It puts you in a position of perpetual uncertainty, making it difficult to trust both them and yourself, which can have long-lasting impacts on your self-esteem and sense of autonomy. Outsmart them. Outsmarting someone who withholds information requires vigilance and assertiveness. First, get into the habit of asking direct, specific questions, especially when you feel like you're not being told everything. Questions like, "Is there anything else I need to know?" or "Is there more to this that might impact my decision?" can be helpful to draw out details they might otherwise avoid sharing. This places the responsibility on them to disclose relevant information. Additionally, don't be afraid to double-check their claims with other sources if possible. When you make it clear that you're thorough and won't accept partial truths, it puts them on notice that their tactics won't go unchallenged. Another effective strategy is to establish consequences for withholding information. If this happens in a professional setting, document instances where critical information was withheld and how it impacted your work. Then bring it up in a constructive manner, showing that transparency is essential for trust and productivity. In personal relationships, communicate that openness and honesty are non-negotiable values. If they consistently fail to meet these, it may be a sign that the relationship lacks the mutual respect necessary for a healthy bond. Deep message. Here's the real truth. Withholding information is a form of control, and people who do this aren't prioritizing your best interests. They're safeguarding their own. Manipulators who withhold information want to keep you uncertain because uncertainty is disempowering. They understand that knowledge is power, and by selectively sharing it, they maintain the upper hand. In healthy relationships, whether personal or professional, information is shared openly because transparency breeds trust. You deserve to be fully informed, to make your own decisions with clarity and confidence. No one has the right to limit your understanding of a situation to suit their agenda. Remember, you have every right to seek the truth, and protecting your autonomy sometimes means asking tough questions and refusing to accept half-truths. Embrace the power that comes with knowledge, and don't let anyone make you feel small by hiding the information you need to stand tall. Stand firm in your right to clarity and trust in your ability to handle the full picture. So there you have it, the mind games manipulators use to control, confuse, and keep us in their grasp. But remember, recognizing these tactics is the first step to taking back your power. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, even disheartened, when you realize someone has been trying to pull your strings, but knowledge is a game changer. The more you understand these strategies, the better equipped you are to defend your boundaries and protect your peace. The truth is, no one deserves to have their confidence chipped away or to feel like they're constantly in someone else's control. Life's too short to be anyone's pawn, so reclaim your strength by calling out these tactics for what they are and holding firm to your values. You're stronger than these games, and every time you push back, you're sending a message that you won't be easily manipulated. Stay grounded, stay aware, and never doubt that you deserve honest, straightforward relationships. The more you stand up for yourself, the harder it is for anyone to try to control you. So keep that head up, trust your instincts, and let your boundaries be a reminder to both you and others that your worth is non-negotiable.